we got Cody Garbrandt now coming back. His last fight was when we had that pandemic, first ever pandemic card, which was on the Gagey versus Ferguson fight. He is now back to fight Rob Font because Cody Garbrandt, he had a battle with COVID. And he was, it was a pretty hard battle as well. His whole I think his family got it as well.
Yeah, and not to mention Cody also had an issue with his bicep. They thought it was a bicep tear, but it wasn't. It was something else.
Yeah.
But he had to take a lot of time off for his arm to heal. I believe it was his right arm.
He's just he's one of those fighters who you look at. Their life has just been complete back and forth, because I've read Cody Garbrandt's autobiography, The Pact, about his history, background, growing up, and his time fighting, and now he's going to so many fights.
There's a lot of violence in his life.
Yeah, he had so much violence in his life, correct. And then, he found MMA and Team Alpha Male and Maddox Maple, and that he was fighting for this kid and so he can get on his treatment, and the reason why he won the title was for him in the first place. And then now he's lost it to he lost it to TJ Dillashaw, and then he lost it to him again, and then he lost a fight after then to, who was it to?
Cody.
Yeah.
His previous fights has been he beat Rafael Assunção.
Yeah.
Before that, it was
he lost
Pedro Munhoz.
Yeah. Yes.
Then there was Dillashaw twice.
Yeah.
And then the fight before that was a win against Dominic Cruz.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So he's on a 3-fight losing skid, and then now he's on a 1-fight win streak
last year. Yeah. So he's just back, one of those back and forth. So then you come back from all that time off, you win a fight, and then you got to go through all this horrendous, injuries, and then not to mention a disease, a virus that's literally wiping out, killing millions of people now, as you would say. And now you're coming back to fight an absolute killer. This dude is tough as they come. So for me, I just loved Cody's boxing, and I love how it was his uncle that taught him a lot of it as well. And his wrestling is just so good. And that's up against a guy like Rob Font, who's got really crisp kickboxing as well. I'm really excited to see these two go out. I believe it's going to be a striking match, but just here's one thing. Cody, I just hope he's abandoned those old ways of just wanting to, completely scrap.
Yeah.
That's cost him a few times.
Yeah, I think with Cody, I think a lot of people broke down his last win against Assunção, saying it was still, chin up, no guard, one hand, one hitter quitter, just fucking smacks him. And he's got the power. Like no one's saying Cody doesn't have power, he doesn't have speed. That's his main attribute. It's really fast, crisp boxing, right? But I think the best performance of Cody Garbrandt was not the Assunção fight. It was his win over Dominic Cruz. Just dominate him with the wrestling, with takedown defense, but particularly his movement. In and out, moving around, slipping and moving. He was avoiding punishment. I think Cody needs to avoid punishment and just be old school boxing. I hit you and you don't hit me, right? I think that's when Cody's the best. When Cody starts to get a little bit of his ego involved, a little bit, he starts to get pulled into almost like almost into just a brawl, almost into like a, what do you call it? Phone booth. Fighting in a phone booth. That's what he tends to do. He did against TJ. He wobbled TJ and then went to fight. He wobbled him, almost KO'd TJ in one of the rounds. TJ gets up, wobbling, walks back to his corner, not walking straight. They fight again, get into another brawl. And Cody's chin doesn't let up. He gets smacked and it hits him on the money, and TJ wins the fight. Does the exact same thing in the Pedro Munhoz fight. Gets caught into a brawl, and starts to forget those fundamentals because his ego is getting involved.
Just becomes incredibly reckless.
Just a really reckless style. This is a tough fight for him. Rob Font's on a 3-fight win streak against he's against Sergio Perez, who is now the is it the PFL?
Yeah,
The PFL bantamweight champion. Ricky Simone. Well, Ricky Simone's a really good fighter. And as well as Marlon Moraes, who was an ex-title contender for the bantamweight division as well.
Here's the weird thing, though. Remember how Cody Garbrandt was meant to drop to flyweight to fight Deiveson Figueiredo?
Never.
Why did that never fabricated?
It was COVID plus the bicep issue.
Yeah.
And he
Plus, it's dangerous.
It is dangerous. I think he was just repeating TJ's mistakes. I think.
Which they've said, which he doesn't tend to anymore.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that TJ is kind of a big bantamweight. He actually is a big bantamweight. If you look at him now, you would think he's actually a lightweight fighter. He's a big guy. Even being ripped, he's got a lot of size on him, right?
Yeah.
Going down to 125, he looked scary. He looked like a bird man. He didn't look right. And you just deteriorate yourself just because you can make that weight, which he technically couldn't because he was taking EPO to get there. But even if you can make that weight, that doesn't mean you're healthy. That doesn't mean that you can put on your best performance. And I think the same thing was Cody. With Cody, like moving down to flyweight, I know he's supposed to be a bit lighter than TJ walking around, and he's quite a small bantamweight. Not a small bantamweight, but he's a small guy. His weight doesn't go up very much, but 125 is not right. You shouldn't move to 125. That's when your athletic performance is compromised. I think you should stay at bantamweight. He was the champion at bantamweight. Keep staying at bantamweight. I think Cody can be champion again, but he needs to
change up.
He just needs to be moving in and out of range. Just continue that really good footwork and crisp boxing that he has. That same performance that he had with Dominic Cruz, emulate that in the rest of your fights. Is that mine?
We interrupt this program to be just for a phone call.
I apologize.
Yeah, we're good. We're back. Anyway,
but in terms of Cody's performances of late, I think he did turn a little bit of a corner with the Sunzao fight, but I don't think it was as drastic as most people think.
Yeah.
I think it was still really reckless. It was really, really reckless. Like if Sunzao was just a couple seconds faster, it could have been Cody that was lying flat on the canvas. So, for me, I think Rob Font will take it. I think.
You reckon? I reckon Cody's going to get this one. But do you forgive me by second round knockout?
Really? You think so?
I just feel like just the way that Cody acted in his last fight, and he just bounced off the cage and just hit that massive hook.
Yeah.
I feel like there's going to be fireworks between the two. I feel like there's going to be a knockout in the second round. I just feel like everyone knows this within the world, within the MMA world, like that second round. So it's so deadly, and everyone just keeps bringing it up. Like, just not even that, but it's in other organizations as well. Like, what's his name? Demetrius Johnson. He lost in the second round. It's just something about that round.
There's something about 2021. Everyone's Demetrius Johnson gets knocked out. Conor McGregor gets knocked out. Stipe Miocic gets knocked out. You've got who else am I thinking of?
Conor McGregor,
Michael Chandler gets knocked out.
Yeah, Michael Chandler.
Jorge Masvidal gets knocked out.
It's just, oh man.
2021's like, I think that Rob Font will beat Cody. I think Cody, unless Cody changes his reckless style and he's in and out and using his movement, I feel like Rob Font hasn't tasted that UFC belt and he's still very hungry and young. And I think, only being 33 years old, and I think it's just I think Cody is such a nice guy, and he's such a good fighter. I just find that the chin's not quite there, and I think he puts it on the line when he gets caught into these brawls. I think his movement is the key to winning. And if he doesn't succeed in the movement, I think Rob Font will beat him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So